Good evening, everyone, and I would like to welcome you and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, February the 1st. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? As I was preparing for tonight's meeting, I went back to our first meeting in February of last year, and I had a good chuckle. The meeting marked the day that restrictions were beginning to lift. Well, of course, that happened yesterday. And you know, I thought it really does seem that we are living out the Groundhog Day movie. In all seriousness, though, I know you are likely feeling the relief of being able to participate in normal activities, sitting in a restaurant, going to the gym, going to the movies. All these activities signal that once again, we are moving out of pandemic living. I would ask you that you familiarize yourself with the restrictions that are still in front of us and adhere to them accordingly. With the sunshine of the past few days, the fresh, crisp winter air, longer days. I mean, I'm looking outside my window and it's, not even dusk. It's beautiful outside. The easing of restrictions, February really looks like it's going to be a good month. And with that in mind, I just want to let everybody know that Lisa and I will be visiting the Mayor's Honor Roll honorees in the coming week to meet and congratulate and thank them all. And we look forward to posting those meetings and congratulations on our social media in the coming weeks. Tonight, Catherine will be presenting the budget for 2022. The budget process is an important one for Council to go through and participate in. It allows us to understand and determine priorities for not only the present year, but plan for future projects in future years. It brings together all the guiding principal documents to develop a financial plan and put an eye on how our community will develop over time. I am looking forward to Catherine's presentation and the discussion that will take place. I want to thank Catherine for her leadership and the staff for the work that they have done to put this all together. I would also like to take this time to thank the members of the Finance Committee, Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins, for the work you have done to provide input into the document thus far. To Council, thank you for your diligence and passion for community that helps develop this budget. Together, we are all working towards making Lucan Biddulph the best community that it can be. So with that, we do not have to go into closed session, but we do have the presentation of the budget. So I will look to Catherine at this time to walk us through her presentation.
Sorry for the delay. It's getting so I can see everything.
Yep.
Okay, thank you and good evening, Madam Mayor and members of Council. Tonight, on behalf of staff, I will be presenting to you the 2022 draft budget. The budget process started last summer with the launch of our first budget survey to engage the public. We had 93 responses. The survey results have been posted on the township's website. In late summer and fall, staff began working on setting the draft budget figures. Several internal meetings were held. In November, the capital projects were presented and discussed at a special council meeting. In December, 2 finance committee meetings were held to review the draft operating budget in detail. A third finance committee meeting was held in early January for one final review before the budget would be presented to full council. Although only a few members of council are appointed to the Finance Committee, all members of council received the same information and had opportunities to review and submit questions to the committee for discussion. The data was also included in the agendas for each meeting and posted on the website. Recordings of all these meetings can be found on the township's YouTube channel. As a result of all that work, we find ourselves here tonight to present the draft 2022 budget to council. So let's get started. Again, all the details, there's more details included in the agenda package, but it's going to touch on some of the main points here. So first, we want to talk about our revenue in our general government. This chart displays the various revenue sources which the township uses to fund general operations and services. As you can see, the largest revenue source comes from property tax. The OMPF increased by $49,000 over 2021. In regards to the fundraising line you see here, this amount is the fundraising goal for the community center renovations that will take place this year. The expense side I will get to later. So let's have a closer look at taxation revenue. There are three components of property tax: municipal, county, and education. The education tax goes to the school boards. The taxation revenue shown on the previous slide represents the municipal portion of the taxes that is raised to fund the township services, which is only about 53% of the total tax bill. County council sets the county tax rate, and the province of Ontario sets the education tax rate. The township collects all the taxes, but then forwards them to the respective agencies. Let's have a closer look at the municipal taxation portion of this. So this chart here breaks down the property tax classes where the revenue is generated from. And it should be no surprise that our highest contributors are residential and farm. But the industrial class is starting to increase as the industrial land gets developed. The figures are the municipal share of the taxes at a 2% municipal tax rate increase. And we came up with a 2% increase to be proposed to help provide a buffer should we not have included enough for inflation, the inflation effects in the budget. And as we know, inflation levels have been very high in recent months, and this trend may continue well into 2022. So the impact of the proposed tax increase is shown here. The average residential assessment in Lucan Biddulph, according to MPAC, is $274,000. Therefore, this property will see an increase of $34 in their tax bill for the year, or less than $3 per month. This is the municipal share of the taxes only. But I do know that the province recently announced that the education tax rate will not change for 2022, and the county change in tax rate has not been determined at this time, but they are currently working on their budget. So this chart displays the assessment value for the different tax classes. The change is small again, and this is due once again to the delay of the MPAC property reassessment. The value changes from 2021 to 2022 are just from growth, either positive or negative. And this chart again highlights the large growth in the industrial class. And we don't know when the reassessment will happen with properties, but I know it won't happen for 2022 and I believe 2023 as well. But that is more to come on that. So before I move on, is there any questions about the taxation revenue side?
Catherine, it's Dave. The only thing is that just for the public's input, if yourself or if Ron, just Ron has explained it to me before, and I think there'd be a lot of people surprised at the $274,000 assessment of the average house in Lucan. And certainly, I don't know if we've gotten word when the assessment is, when they're going to reassess the values, but I think it's to reassure everybody, if your house goes up, you know, realistically, the average house in Lucan appears on the market at $600,000. It's not like your taxes are going to double. You know, it is a proportionate to a percentage. So that's all.
If we don't, sorry. We don't know when that reassessment will take place, but once that happens, there'll be lots of discussion on see what happens with how that affects our tax revenue side of things, what we do then.
Okay.
Ron?
Madam Mayor, through you to the Deputy Mayor. One of the important things to keep in mind, and I think this is how I explained it to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, it doesn't matter how much it goes up. It depends how it goes up in relation to the average increase across. So if all residential doubles, in theory, if nothing changes, the amount of tax you pay will not change. The of course, that's never going to happen. Things go up and down. You know, I think it's a fair comment to say that farmland has certainly not gone up to the same extent that residential properties have gone up. So I think what you're going to see is the residential portion is of, so the residential slice of the pie, if you think about it as a pie, the residential slice will get a little bigger. The eligible farmland would get a little smaller, but everything's going to adjust a little bit. So the important thing to remember is when everybody does eventually get their impact notice, it'll say on there what the average increase is. And you have to look at your number and how that number compares to the average. And that's going to make the difference. So if you're below average, in theory, your taxes may go down. If it goes up, if it's up a lot, it could have an impact. So it's going to depend. But to the treasurer's point, we're not seeing that. We're not going to see it in 2022. We're not going to see that impact in 2023. The earliest would be 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move on to expenses. So the general expenses are broken out here, and the larger categories we have include administration, which are things like admin salaries, benefits, insurance, utilities, economic development, our events, Canada Day, legal, and IT. Another big section is our public works, the roads department, but I'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. Protective services is a big portion that we service, and it includes the police, fire, building inspectors, bylaw officers, crossing guards, animal control, health and safety, cybersecurity, and conservation authorities. And then you can see there a large number there is reserves. This is what we're putting away or saving for future projects. And to present a balanced budget, the draft budget surplus has been placed in tax rate stabilization reserve, but that's for presentation purposes only. Council may choose to place this in another reserve or change spending in another category, but I'll talk about this more in next steps at the end of the presentation. The fundraising expenses of $20,000 will be found within administration expense. And remember, on the revenue side, we had the goal, and here we have our expenses. And the difference between the fundraising goal revenue and these expenses will be transferred to reserves, and it'll be drawn against to use for the project. So that, along with the budget surplus, explains that large increase in the transfers to reserves for 2022. So a few items to highlight within the budget. So the cost of living adjustment for the salary grid and council remuneration was set by council in December at a 2% increase over 2021. And this increase has been incorporated into the draft budget across all the various departments. Our insurance cost has increased over the 2021 budget. Our policy renews each September, and the increase that received at the renewal was applied to the first 8 months of 2022, and for the remaining months of the year, we assumed a 10% increase at renewal time. 2022 is in a municipal election year, so the cost to run this election, including estimated staff time, is budgeted at $20,000. We have a line for cybersecurity, $8,750 was added to the budget. This is to fund software and staff training required to reduce the risk of a cybersecurity threat. These measures are required to maintain insurance coverage. Under planning and zoning, there are two line items where the budget has been increased. $40,000 was added for a consultant to assist with the design standards, that review, and legal fees under planning and zoning were increased as there may be appeals related to the official plan amendment that is currently in process. Are there any questions on these before I move to the two specific items for council? Nope. Okay. So there's two items that have come up that we need council to make a decision on. So we can add to the budget or not. So I was going to stop sharing so we can have everyone can see everybody. So first one I want to talk about is in the fall, council received a presentation from the St. Mary's Healthcare Foundation in regards to their fundraising campaign. Council chose to defer making a decision until budget time. The request was $24,000 over 2 years. Nothing has been included in this draft budget, but now is the time for council to discuss this and make a decision on whether to include it in the budget or not.
Okay, I'll open it up. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I know for a certain fact that many of our residents in Lucan Biddulph are served by the St. Mary's Hospital and Clinic. You know, there's I know in the Granton area alone, there's probably several dozen, if not more, that are have doctors in St. Mary's and utilize that hospital. So I would be in favor of supporting them because it is something that does serve our community quite well. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I really struggled with that one. I agree with everything Alex said. My issue is, I've probably heard it said before at council, it's not the municipalities that typically fund this. It is the provincial government. And is it up to the individual, ratepayers to donate to their fundraising as they feel fit and as they use the facility? As we all know, we've got people in Lucan that go to London to use the healthcare there, to Exeter, to St. Mary's, to Stratford, all over. I'm certainly not debating on what Alex said. I agree with it. But we're also using, we're basically making a donation for every ratepayer in Lucan Biddulph, and I don't think that, I feel uncomfortable with, and for that reason, I'm not in favor of that, because I think those would leave it up to those that would like to support that and make a tax donation on their own and see the benefit of that. So that's just my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Regan.
Thank you. I agree with what Alex is saying, but again, I'm again a little more in line with what the deputy mayor is saying about perhaps people individually on their own making donations to that hospital. Again, not everybody uses that one, and I know that we are serviced well by the St. Mary's Hospital. But again, I'm just thinking about just perhaps leaving it up to the individual to make donations on behalf of their family, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hodgins.
I'd just like to, I guess, echo the comments from Councillor Regan and Councillor Manders. Yeah, it's a tricky one. You obviously want to help out, but it does come down to that spending of taxpayer dollars. And I think we did ask for staff to maybe look at some of our peers or our neighboring municipalities and what they did. And I think we heard that some of the other neighboring municipalities didn't make that contribution either. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. I would probably fall on, well, I do fall on the same side as the deputy mayor and Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. It is unfortunate that, the request has come through, and as Dave said, we've said time and time again that healthcare is not a municipal responsibility. And as much as it's a wonderful cause, our residents are served incredibly well, but they're also served by the hospital in Exeter, Strathroy, and London, and it's a slippery slope once we start making that kind of donation. I think good points have been brought up about if residents are so inclined that they could make a donation on their own, and perhaps that's an area in which we could do a little bit to support the campaign, and maybe we could have our communications officer reach out to the campaign chair and look to see how they are advertising that, and we could certainly show that, support that on our social media channels, and perhaps even in an upcoming newsletter. But I certainly wouldn't, as worthy as the cause is, I'm certainly not in favor of honoring the request. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that if we could at least, help them do a little bit of campaigning. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. And that's a very good caveat for, I'm just looking to help them whatever way we can. So I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Okay, Catherine, I think you've got direction there.
Think so. Thank you. Okay, the second point we have is in regards to the fire departments. So every year we take part of the levy and transfer it to the two fire boards. The draft budget includes a 5% increase to the levy for each department. The Biddulph Blanchard, or I'm going to call it the Granton Fire Board, requested a 10% increase. And as is our practice, we would apply the same percentage increase to both fire departments. If approved for 2022, this would be an additional $8,568 for Lucan and $4,993 for Granton over what is presented in the budget. Also note that the Granton department is shared with the Township of Perth South. So therefore, both municipalities would have to have the same percentage increase. So I just want to know if council would like to, in the last year we did 5%, this year we have 5% in the draft. Would you like to change that 5% into a 10% levy?
What was that number for the Lucan department? Sorry.
$8,568.
Okay. And I guess my question, and then I will open it up for questions. I guess I'll just jump in. The request from the Granton Fire Department, that was specifically that money was going to reserves, or was it for a specific project? Do we know? Ron.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to answer that question. The intent was to increase the amount going into the reserve account because they know that there are additional services, large costs loom on the horizon for equipment replacement. It's not a great deal of money, but it sort of gets us started in that direction. And I think it's more, what's the word? I guess a vote of confidence to them that we are going to try and do what we can to make sure that there's enough money in the account when the time comes that we need to purchase a large piece of equipment.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Manders.
So is this a ongoing thing, a higher increase every year, or I assume, or a one-time ask, or?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. I believe that we would like this to continue on a go-forward basis. And again, the extra $8,000 a year over the next 4 years is probably not going to be, we still won't be where we need to be, but it's going to get us closer to where we have to be. I guess that's the way we can put it. So
yeah. Our budget is in good shape. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, nor am I opposed to at all supporting the fire department financially. I just, from a community standpoint, if there is ever a ladder truck or a larger building, or these major expenses that need to be done, I think the appetite again for a community support and loan of that is probably better received than some of my previous projects I've been involved with. I'll use the Public Works Department for an example, and even the township building, where the ratepayers would probably see which I saw obviously very good value in what we did. Don't get me wrong, I support those projects, but I don't think we'll ever get there in the fire budget to maybe some of the expenses we need to get to. And again, it doesn't. Those kind of numbers don't hurt our budget, but if they were, I would be concerned. But at that rate, I'm satisfied with that.
Any other questions or comments on this particular request? I guess my question would have to be, Ron, because we share this, and maybe Catherine, to both of you, and it is directed at the Granton budget. We share that budget or those costs with South Perth, and I don't know where they are in their budget process, and are they prepared to go along with a 10% increase as well? And where they, I guess, where are they at with that?
Catherine, did you want me to answer that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, to answer that question. I did reach out to the CAO in Perth South, and she said at this point in time they're not as far along in their budget process, but their initial budget has them at a 5% increase. So if our council were to approve a 10% increase for both Lucan Biddulph and Biddulph Blanchard, I think what would happen is that additional 5% we would just withhold from their budget. It wouldn't technically get transferred over there. We would have to hold it in, I guess, in our reserve. So it's still there. That's not to say that they, being Perth South, may not come to the table with 10%. They know what the ask is. They just haven't got to that point in their budget deliberations.
Okay. And then I guess just to be clear, the idea is at this level, so you'd be looking at 85 or in that neighborhood, being directed to the budget every year. It's not that we're going to increase it by 10% every year. Are we at that? We're at the ask level now. Yeah, okay. And I guess the other point is just in the budget document, I mean, I think that our departments are very responsible, and they do incredibly well with the money that they have. But I guess I just want to make sure that it is earmarked for reserves and it isn't used for anything else.
Yep, we can make that very, very clear.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on that? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to be just clear enough. I missed it. Sorry. So the 10% asked from Lucan Biddulph is also for reserves, Ron? Is that correct? It is. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Thank you. So I'm supportive of that 10% increase, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Back to you, Catherine.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and put that 10% in.
Okay.
Okay. So let's move on and talk about Public Works, the roads department in particular. So this shows the breakdown of the different expenses. The larger piece here is what we call general, but that includes all the repairs and maintenance of the equipment, the public workshop utilities, insurance, tools, sidewalk repairs, drainage, culverts, tree planting, and trimming. And the salaries and benefits are broken out over all the categories, except for street lighting. Most of the expenses are at the same level as the prior year's budget. A few of the larger changes are noted here. Some expenses increase to cover inflation and increase in coverage areas as we take on new developments. Salary allocations over the categories were reviewed and revised again from 2021, as we want to try to get the timesheets put in the right categories so we know what people are working on and do a better job of that. We've been working on that in the last 2 budgets. Tools and shop supplies, we increased this year one time to add a purchase of a bush hog mower. a piece of equipment. Currently, if they need such an equipment, they borrow one, but we just want to have their own to use. Under waste collection special pickup, I know that that's included under garbage and recycling, which was part of the general expenses slide, but I wanted to mention it here under public works roads because that department takes care of our looking after large cleanup day, but not only our yard waste bins. The yard waste bins is a service that has been requested to be expanded, and typically the bins are out in the spring and in the fall and are removed in the summer months. This is how it was budgeted for in 2021, but in 2021, based on several requests and demand, the bins remained at the public works shop from spring through fall. And this was well received, and this level of service was included in the 2022 budget. Is there any questions on the public works roads department? No.
Doesn't appear to be anything.
All right, so moving on to our Parks and Rec. So this slide shows the various revenue streams for Parks and Rec operations. The township levy is the portion of the taxes collected that fund the Parks and Rec services and has remained virtually unchanged from 2021. This slide shows the expenses of the Parks and Rec department operations. It takes a big team of dedicated staff to run programs and maintain the community center, the arena, parks, and all the other facilities and equipment. The 2021 budget was created with COVID restrictions in mind. The 2022 budget was prepared with only a few restrictions remaining and with the ice being in for the whole year and other programming to resume. Therefore, some line items will have increased over the prior year's budget to reflect this increase in activity. As well, the construction timeline will impact allowable activities at the community center. Our parks maintenance expenses have increased due to assumption of new park areas and required maintenance, as well as increased use of the splash pad, in particular water usage there. To help ease some of the workload related to the park areas, as well as the renovation project, the 2022 budget includes adding 4 year-round student positions. One item that has come to light are the trees at Market Street Park. A budget of $10,000 has been included in the draft budget, but I'm going to ask Paul to provide more information so that council can determine if to keep this amount in the budget or not. I'm going to pass over to Paul.
Thank you, Catherine. So this amount has been estimated for staff for determining this project. This is to address the trees that basically abut along the property line of the Market Street Park to the residents that live right directly behind, that live on Alice Street. There's been several complaints over the last 2 years about these trees and growing into their fence line. As has been assessed, I mean, ideally, we'd never plant trees that close to a fence line now. I mean, these trees have been there for a very long time. They're very large, developed trees. I think it would be appropriate for council to ask staff to conduct maybe a public meeting or a survey of the residents that live along this property to see, the thoughts of everyone who abuts the property, because it is a large expense. And once those trees are gone, it'll vastly change how the park looks and how the residents see into the park. So obviously this number would be addressing cutting down those trees and planting new ones. It's been brought up before, I believe, by Madam Mayor. We should maybe address trying to put larger trees in when we do replace them, as these are very well developed trees. But I think it's something for council to really consider and think about. I do feel that public input along Alice Street should be addressed for this project. For placement in the budget, however, Catherine and I both discussed we should put this in as a placement, and if council wishes to go forward with this project, maybe with instructions for, to place the number into the budget with staff to proceed and conduct a public meeting, because it's going to significantly impact the park and those properties. So I leave it to council to kind of open up to conversation.
Okay. Ron.
Madam Mayor, if I could just add maybe a couple more things. The trees, like Paul has said, they've grown right into the fence. It's becoming now a maintenance item where it's a definite problem. Something has to be done. And I guess that's the point at which we are right now. We have to spend some money. And the question is, how do we want to proceed? And I think, when we had a look at the properties last year with a couple of the property owners that were complaining about the trees, it became apparent that we can't just do one here and one over there, because those are the two that are complaining. There's 3-4 more that need to come down. So Paul went out and got the estimate from a tree company. This is what it's going to cost to basically professionally remove those trees that are causing the problems. And then to his point, how do we mitigate the loss of those trees to those people? So whether it's a I don't know that I'd call it a public meeting, but an open house kind of thing to get ideas from those people as to what we can do and what their expectations are, I think is where we're at.
Okay. Councillor Regan.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would like to see that amount left in the budget, and then we have an open meeting, public meeting, whatever we have to do to find out what we can do to mitigate that. I guess when we're talking about starting to remove trees, that wakes up a lot of people, I think. And of course, replacement of trees is not cheap at all. But I would have no problem going forward with leaving that amount in the budget and then talking to the residents and then see what we can do from that point forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, no, I think you'll see people losing their marbles. I think we need to, I'm not about public input. I'm about, I think we should inform the public of the solution staff comes up with, is what we should be doing. So we're going to inform the public in the street of the solution. It's going to mitigate it. Not, you're going to have, I would love to, you think about your recommendation and I don't know how many lawns are there. There's 10 lawns and 5 say they're fine, 5 say they're not. I think we need to come up with a solution. If our community has a problem in that park that we that we have to run, that the input doesn't change the problem. If the input is leave the trees there, what are you going to do? We have a problem. Let's solve the problem. And to me, let's give the input to the solution, and it should be a good one. So if the trees are removed, probably even looking at spading and more mature trees as opposed to smaller trees is one solution. Making sure that it's not a problem for the next public works manager in 30 years after they grow, and that this doesn't happen again. I mean, it's to me, the solution is, what does this look like in 30 years? And then also not putting in seedlings or something now to help, I think, with that separation of the park for that area. That's my input anyways. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this particular line item? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the trees, and they're very old. And I do believe that there's a need to do something about them. And we do have opportunity to put in, established trees in a better location. So, I mean, I don't think it's a real big problem. Most people will understand. There will be some who will be very upset about it, but like the deputy mayor always says, if we can defend it to the public, then that's the thing to do. So I think we need to solve a problem and find a solution for the future. Just like deputy mayor was saying, it's got to be something we put some thought into that's going to be manageable 10, 15, 20, and 30 years from now. So I don't think it's a problem.
Okay, Any other comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Yeah, I think if the trees are a maintenance issue and they're on the park property, even though they are encroaching a little bit on the private property and they have to come down, then they have to come down. I don't think it should be too big of a deal, but I guess I would encourage and support communicating with residents and consulting or asking the questions as required. I was just going to ask maybe clarification for Paul, whether the cost, the $10,000, if that's just the removal or if that is replanting as well.
That cost is the quote for removal. We've been very successful with the ABCA for grant funding for planting. So my proposal to council would be, for a project this large, I think we should approach ABCA, see if there's another replanting initiative we could do if we were removing these many trees, well-established trees. So that cost is simply for the removal.
Okay. And just to follow up, I'm just wondering, like within the budget document itself, it is identified within the Market Street Park line item, and I'm just wondering if it should maybe be in the trees item, or just a question.
To address that, through Madam Mayor, so that's really how we set up our budget for the expenses. The expenses Market Street Park as a tree planting usually falls under the tree. So that's why those are separate line items are the way that they are, to just kind of identify where they are. I would tend to agree that maybe we should address some more tree planting in the Market Street Park budget line. But I would, like I said before, I would hope that we would be able to do a partnership with the HCA for planting.
Thanks, Paul.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
I guess I'm not, or I should be more educated in this than I am. One thing that was left off maybe for consultation, with the neighbors, and again, for me, it's about staff presenting a solution. Again, I think it's a slippery slope on input, but I think what we miss maybe the head of is that the Lions Parks? Would you talk to the Lions Club so they know? Just with their name, I don't believe was mentioned, so I just want to make sure that they're aware of the problem and then the solution. That was all. Okay, thank you.
If I may, to you, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
I would highly recommend consultation with the Lions Club, as that in the 60s this became their park, and some of these trees, I don't believe these trees they planted because these are very large developed trees, but if they had, I think to save emotions and feelings, I think it's very important that we include them in the conversation. And they do have programs through the Lions Club to donate trees as well, so there may be opportunities there as well.
Any other comments? I'd just like to echo what the Deputy Mayor said. I'm all for public input, but I do think that on this subject, it could get rather heated, and we at least have to go in with a presented solution. And you've got to come up with that if we're taking the trees down, then this is what we're going to do. And I wouldn't support a open house or a public meeting if there wasn't a solution on the table to at least start with. So that's my 2 cents on that. I guess the other question I have is, then, and I know that Market Street Park is unique in where it is, and the fact that you've got neighbors that abut right up to the park, but are we going to run into this situation in any of our other parks? I'm concerned that, this didn't happen overnight. We could see, I'm sure if we look back in years that this was going to be an issue, and I don't want to see this happen again. This is an expensive problem to have to fix, not only from a money standpoint, but probably from a goodwill standpoint. So I want to make sure that going forward, we're not in this position in any of our other parks. And I am concerned, I understand, that we'll work with community partners. We'll try to get some money through ABCA granting, but that is not guaranteed. And I do think that there needs to be, if we're going to put the $10,000 as a placeholder in there while we work through this, then there should be a placeholder for an investment on our part in the event that there is not a willing partner or grant out there to help us replace the trees. Paul.
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, the only other park I can think of that may potentially have this issue down the line is Elm Street Park. However, those trees are a fair distance off the fence line. So I believe when they were planted as that's a more modern park, that they were planted considering property line issues. So I don't think that they will become an issue. I hope that they do not. I think they're at least 6 to 7 feet off the property line, which is the appropriate distance. As well as I would say the tree budget that we have in our standard budget, it's just we would leave that number in there, but that number itself would be dedicated solely to the Market Street Park tree planting for this budget year.
So I'm looking at it, and the line item, if I'm looking at it, is $5,000.
Yes.
And how many trees are we looking to replace?
I believe at this time, it depends if the pines are an issue or not. I think they're okay. It's mostly the maples. There's about 5 to 6 large mature trees. Obviously, we could plant, for every 1 tree that we cut down, we go 2 to 3 saplings, and that should more than cover it. Unless we want larger developed trees, obviously, then we'd have to reduce the number, increase the cost.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of the saplings. I think if we're going to replace them, we need to somehow replace the look that is there. But that can be a discussion for the future. And I don't know the cost of trees. I guess if they're larger trees, I don't know whether the 5,000 is large enough, but I guess that's where we are with that. Okay. So I guess we'll keep the 10,000 in there as the placeholder, Catherine.
Okay. And then if throughout the project or more discovery research, you can always come back council with a budget amendment or a way to fund the cost of those trees, or depending on what the result is of that. Okay. Is there any other questions about other Parks and Rec or operating items? I can move on to capital.
Doesn't appear.
Okay, so the capital projects, we talked about them at the council meeting in November. So I've just listed them here, the same ones that we had talked about already. So on different public works, there are road projects there, and the sand salt storage shed and the purchase of a backhoe for equipment. And under administration, we have our modernization projects and the gazebo or a band shell at the Market Street Park. Under Parks and Rec, of course, our community center renovation. We have that number now. Then the new soccer field development that is should be tendered soon, I would say. We have our multi-purpose athletic courts and playground equipment to enhance the Spencer Park. And then the one item, just a quick discussion. It's not a full-on discussion about the pool. We just have an estimate there, but it's not, it's the discussion we had. If the council would like to see the pool upgraded, it's either, yes, we want to do something with it or explore what could be done with it, or no, just leave it the way it is. That's a decision now. And then if council wants to see changes or upgrades to the pool happen, then staff will do the research and bring back a report to council in future with the options, estimates, timelines, for more discussion then. So that's really the only really discussion I had left on the capital side of things. And not just be leave the pool it is or look into how it can be improved.
Hey, comments on that? guess maybe I will get it going. I mean, I don't think we're in a position, obviously, tonight to make that decision, but I certainly would. I would certainly support a future report from staff as to what the options are. I mean, I think it's been discussed. I think it was discussed at the budget committee level. Certainly, I think it's been discussed within the community that the pool needs to be addressed, and how is council going to do that? You know, it's no secret. I've spoken about a neighboring community's project and their revitalization of their community pool, and you know, I can see a lot of similarities in our project. Is there opportunity to do that this year? You know, to do it from an affordable standpoint, to get it all done, and then, you know, we're done with that piece of property for a period of time. We could bundle it all into a loan. So as I say, I think I think we should get a staff report back as to what our options are and what moving forward could look like. Paul, I see your hand up.
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, just to reflect some of the comments that were brought up at the most recent Parks and Rec committee meeting. They had expressed desire for council to make some sort of commitment to the future of the pool. So, you know, for council to think about that. Obviously, I informed them that is part of the conversation that's gone on at council, that, you know, like, the pool's not going anywhere. And ideally, we'd like to make a commitment to improve on our pool. I think the thought process, and obviously our previous, we had a construction meeting set up for the end of last week, which was pushed off for COVID reasons. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to talk about the pool season yet. But one thing that they very much stressed is they would ideally really like to have a pool season this year. So I would say to council, if they could keep that in their thoughts of if the construction is able to allow a pool season, we should definitely make sure it happens. So maybe that could mean, you know, if this is a project that council wishes to proceed with, it may be something that could happen in the fall or potentially like the spring next year. But obviously this is something we should look into, and, you know, if council wishes, and I'm more than willing to look into it some more. And I think that's because you do get in issues too when you have two construction projects going on at once. But I think we can definitely work around all that very easily. I think we can definitely work together and make something good. But I think, you know, obviously if we came up with a project, say tomorrow, it probably wouldn't be done before the summertime. So I think ideally we'd look towards the fall if we were going to do one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Comments on the pool?
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
It wasn't up.
Oh, well, there you go. That's why I didn't see it.
Sorry, my lips went before my hand. If I heard Paul right, you know, obviously I respect the committee's comments on ideally wanting to get the pool open this year because of it being, I'm assuming, closed previous years. But I keep thinking of the timing, even if the construction workaround can be done and the pool open, it's just with the volume of construction going on in that area. If, you know, I just think unless timeline's too tight to get a quote on the renovation, to just in case from your construction meeting it's deemed that it's unsafe to open, and you know, I don't want to be the downer on COVID, but, you know, could things change? It still appears to be active in Ontario. You know, it's just this renovation timing with construction and COVID, it just makes so much sense to proceed with I'd like to see a quote on this, on a renovation of the pool. That's what I'm trying to get to. Thank you.
Okay. Paul?
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, perhaps the proper avenue would be for council to instruct staff to proceed with at least, you know, the first steps of this project, developing this project, seeing what it would look like, and then we can develop it, and then, you know, whether it happens now or in the fall, you know, as to Deputy Dave Mander's point, you know, at least we have it there in our back pocket should we need to call on it. So obviously, if that's council's wish, that would be good direction for staff.
Okay, I think that sort of direction, Ron, should it be a motion? And if so, maybe we'll do it when we come out of this discussion, and we can do that motion in the after the budget's passed, or do it in the Parks and Rec department, or it can be.
So,
Yep.
Mayor, I would suggest to hold off. We have our construction meeting tomorrow morning, so we will find out. And there's no point in moving in one direction until we find out tomorrow morning. If the contractor says there's no way we're going to be able to do it this year, then to the Deputy Mayor's point, you know, it changes your focus a little bit, and then we can focus on something else. But I don't even think we need a motion of council at this point. We are very well aware as staff that we want to do something with the pool. So tomorrow morning, probably by noon, we're gonna know what we can do, whether anything's possible this year or not, and then we can bring something back next meeting.
Well, I think that the two things for the construction meeting tomorrow is to, you know, ask from the Parks and Rec committee standpoint whether we can even host a safe season of swimming. And then from there, the scope of the project, you know, maybe we can do both. You can have a safe season and it can be done in the fall. I believe that the project that was done in Temp Center was done after the end of the swimming season, and they did it in the months into the fall. So of course that's another option, but I will leave it to staff to have that discussion tomorrow. Okay, Catherine.
Okay, so moving on, so the last slides talked about all our projects, and this slide shows about how we can pay for them. So we start with all our outside funding and loans, and then we draw from reserves the remaining amounts. Our OCIF amount has about doubled from last year, so that was a nice announcement to receive. The CCBF, which is the Canada Community Building Fund, or which is previously called the federal gas tax, includes the carryover of unused funds from 2021 plus the 2022 allocation. The county figure is an estimate only. The project and the numbers require further discussions with all the parties involved. And the loan amount shown will be larger than shown here once we know the tendered costs for some of these projects and can determine a funding plan. So any questions about capital? Yeah.
I don't see any hands.
Okay. So that brings us all the budget, those I want to talk about, but our summary. So we have a 2% municipal tax rate increase. We'll have a budget surplus. Now that changes from a little bit from the 275 because of our change with their fire departments. But first, before we move to these kind of discussion next steps, we have to have the public meeting for the water and wastewater rate increases. So Jeff will present the budgets for those two departments, and then we can come back to this slide to talk about how to proceed with the budget. And it's almost perfect timing.
I was just going to say, holy, did you rehearse this? And did you know? Because I've got 6:29 on my phone. So you did a very good job. So thanks, Catherine, for that. And I think lots of good discussion and direction has been given there. Any other further comment while we just wait till the clock ticks to 6:30 to start the public meeting?
Catherine, one quick question. You had mentioned the fire department would, I believe you said had to be added, but then does the St. Mary's donation, was that in there also that needs to be taken out?
No,
That was just for discussion.
correct. So through the mayor, we had 0 in there in regards to the hospital donation. And then for the fire departments, they only had a 5%. So I'll have to add the 10%, which will then decrease the amount of the estimated budget surplus that's shown there. So in if there's pending any other changes in the recommended motion, it just will say the budgeted surplus instead of a specific amount.
Right.
And then all council have to decide on is where they like to put it. I have it parked in the tax stabilization, but that's only for presentation so that you can see it. It doesn't get lost in one of the other numbers.
Right.
But the recommendation will be my recommendation would be either to split it between Parks and Rec and construction. But council can determine where to place that because our tax rate stabilization reserve is quite healthy, which you can see in some of the supplemental information that I've provided. So.
Right. Thank you.
Any other further comments before we move into the public meeting for the water and sewer rates? Okay, so seeing none, with that, we can be considered to be in our public meeting for the proposed water and sewer rates discussion for 2022. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Manager, Jeff Little, to present his report, and then we will open it up for discussion. So over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening. So I have two things. They're very much interconnected. I do have a report, an information report on the rate increases that are proposed. But before we get to that, I would just like to go over the budgets for 2022 and have a little bit of a background on the budgets themselves before we get to the rate increases. So the first one is the water system, and I guess I should start with both utilities are funded by users. They are not reliant on the tax system. So if you use the water or the wastewater system, you do have to fund that system. So and I guess maybe just make sure everybody's aware that every time you do turn on a tap or you do flush a toilet, it does cost money. Everything from the operation of the system, hydro plays a large amount in both budgets. And then, of course, on the water side, we have to buy the water, and we also have to pay to get rid of the biosolids on the wastewater side of things. So we do have to bring in revenue to pay for the expenses, and through consultation with Catherine, we review the budget from last year. We looked at in projecting what 2022 will look like on some of our items, and we try to come up with a number that will basically balance or gets close to balancing the budget. Having said that, we are proposing a rate increase. We're looking at a 3% increase in revenues on the water side of things and the revenue side of things, and a 2% increase on the sanitary revenue. Before I go on to the capital side of things, I'll just explain that with a 2% or a 3% increase on the water system revenues, we would be looking at a surplus of around $2,000 on a $600,000 budget. So we would be a little less than 1% surplus on the water side of things. And on the wastewater, we would be running roughly close to about a $54,000 surplus. And that again will be a little more operational budget on that side will be a little over $600,000. The water rates, or the rates, are made up by three different categories. We have a usage, which is billed by the cubic meter. We have a flat rate, which is every month there's a flat rate charged. These two items add up to the operational revenues, and then we also have a capital levy, which we collect each month also. The capital levy is a a fee that, or a rate that is put in place, and it's based on regulations from the province, that we do have to collect for replacement of our infrastructure. It's just it's a requirement of the systems. We do have to collect that. We do have to keep that reserve account there, and rightly so. As we do our capital projects, we can draw from it and replace for it, like we did discuss. And as for the capital side of things, for the public works system, we are going to be doing a new water main on Alice Street in 2022. We're going to be looking at a new roof at the booster pumping station on William Street. We're looking at upgrading the bulk water dispensing station at the tower in Lucan, as well as we need to extend the water main on Fallon Drive, and we need some generator upgrades, and that will be at the booster station on William Street. On the wastewater side of things, we're doing a little bit of work on Alice Street. It's not much. We do have a minor repair on Alice Street while we're doing that project. We do have, obviously the big one is the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. We'll be finishing off our application to the ministry, and then we'll be starting design there. So that's the big one on the wastewater side of things. So we also have generator upgrades at the wastewater plant in Granton, and we also are looking at a flow study that is just finishing up now, which should be coming to council in February. As part of the capital levies, we do have the reserves, and that's what we'll draw from on the capital side of things. Part of that is to maintain those accounts. And basically our water plan, or our plan, has always been in place to cover inflation. And that inflation, we generally have labeled at 2%. That's our goal. And as things go now, obviously this last little bit, we've seen an increase in inflation, but I've always said that we'll try and stick to our plan, and we'll reevaluate. We reevaluate the financial plans every 5 years. So we've included a 2% increase on each capital levy to counter inflation for 2022. If we look at, I guess maybe I'll stop it there. If anybody has any discussion on the budget side of things before I continue with the rates, I would open it up for questions.
Jeff, through Madam Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
I always think that that there's not a higher surplus with such hyper growth we're having in Lucan. So our growth, it appears, just with our growth, and it appears it really has little effect then on our rates, does it? Like, it doesn't help. Doesn't appear to help. I have no issue with the increases. I just keep thinking with our hyper growth and more coming in, you just think, or am I reading it wrong or seeing this wrong? Or,
and through the mayor, there is a benefit to the users. We do, we do be able to spread the cost of operation out a little bit more each year. If we add say another 50 homes or 100 homes, we are able to spread that operational revenue out and collect a little bit more, and as well as we are able to collect a little bit more on the capital levy side of things. So we do work that in, and as we did our financial plans, we do base growth in on the capital levies. Of course, as we do have growth, we add more infrastructure, which we have to collect more money to support also. So it is an accounting system that we have to keep an eye on. So it's certainly there is some benefit there. It's certainly they do help to the system to a point.
yeah, our expenses, obviously buying the water from Lake Huron and our pumps and our hydro and everything goes up with more usage. It just, again, with the volume of, and I'm not talking just this budget. I'm in the last two terms. It's just amazing the growth we've had, that it seems like this budget is always It's healthy enough, but I would have just thought, it'd be healthier with the growth, and it's just, I find that interesting and disappointing, not from a staff standpoint, just from a standpoint of, I just would have thought, you know what I mean? But it's amazing how much these things cost us. That's all, like as a municipality, that's all.
Yeah, and through the mayor, what we've seen is chemicals. These are not going up 2%. They're going up, they're leaping up on us. Rates of insurance, Catherine had the slide up there, went up 23%. So yeah, we talk about overall budgets of 2, maybe 3%. But we are seeing certain items coming through that are considerably more than that. And the infrastructure itself, the building materials on replacing some of the stuff, we have to account for that. So yeah, if you go back and look at some of the inflationary items, it's on building materials. So we have to account for some of that. So I think, and again, in my opinion, that we're doing pretty good for what's coming through on the system.
Yeah, no, and I guess the flip side I could look at it is, I'd imagine a report would be a lot different if we had the last 3 years, we built 10 houses. So yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. And one of the things that have also gone up is the repairs. We're finding the systems are starting to age. They're getting to the point where they're getting to the halfway point, past the halfway point. So we are seeing some of the building repairs starting to pop up. Garage doors, stuff like that. So all that starts to affect as our infrastructure ages. On the same note, I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about the rates. I mentioned it that we are looking at a 3% increase on the water revenues, and a 2% increase on the capital, or on the wastewater revenues, which if we put that towards, and what I'm recommending is we put it towards the usage on our cubic meters. So that would be a 5.3% increase per cubic meter, would account for the 3% on the water and the 2% on the sanitary, and we can leave the flat rate as is. And basically what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at surrounding municipalities, what the cubic rate is, and flat rates of surrounding municipalities, what in relation what we're doing. We're finding that our cubic meter rates are fairly low compared to adjacent municipalities. So there's certainly room for them to come up, and certainly we would still be lower than most of our neighbors. Also, with the usage, you put a little bit more cost goes on. As the higher users of the system, you pay a little bit more for it. Whereas if you are a non-user of the system, you pay a little bit less. So I think that's a fair way at this point until our user rates come up and our cubic meter rates come up. I think that's a fair system to get that kind of back up and running. So that's what I'm proposing in the report. And again, I'm keeping to the 2% on the capital levies as presented in the financial plan, and as based on inflationary increases, and as we've previously done in the past. If you look at it, what it really does, it comes down to the increases sorry, I missed my thing there. So the increases would be the increases for a 3-month utility bill based on an average, and we use an average of 15 cubic meters as our average. There are certainly lots of people that use less than 15 meters, and there is more people that use over 15 meters, but we do use 15 cubic meters per month as the average. We've done that. It's been done that through our financial plans, and basing that as our average. The average utility bill for water is going to be would be $130.29, and for wastewater $182.04. This is a total increase for the 3-month period of $6.87. So that's what we're looking at, but the rates would go up on an average bill. If you were a heavy user, obviously your rates are going to be a little bit more. If you are a lighter user than the 15 cubic meters, you certainly would be less than the $6.87 per 3-month billing period. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it open. I know this is a public meeting, so I can open the back to the mayor.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that, Jeff. It is a public meeting, and we do have a public member of the public who's registered, but at this time, I'm going to open it up to council for discussion and comment, and then I'll go to the public portion. Are there any comments from council? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, and thanks, Jeff, for all that information. Yeah, completely supportive of, I guess, the increase being allocated to the usage rates rather than the flat rates. I think that's good, and in the spirit of, I think, like climate change and conservation, we want to encourage people to be more conservative with their water use, and people that use more should maybe pay more. So supportive of that. And interesting to note that our usage rates are a bit lower than our neighboring municipalities or our peer group. I guess I'm not necessarily asking to open it up here, but I'm just wondering, is there a possibility like to, I guess, redistribute those rates? Like if we wanted to look at raising our usage rates and maybe lowering the flat rates, like just redistributing those allocations in any way, is that something that could be considered at some point? Just a general question, I'm not necessarily requesting that now.
No, and through the mayor, that's, yeah, and that's always been on my mind. It's a great question, and every municipality treats their billing system slightly different. It's a strange, and it is sometimes, and I guess it comes down to uniqueness of the systems. Some systems might be heavy on commercial, and other ones are heavy on residential and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, that's on my mind because we do need to maybe review how our rates are going, and look at how our demographics are changing. And it would certainly be worth further look on that subject for sure. Yeah, I would support that.
Did you have a follow-up at all, Councillor Hodgins?
Maybe just a follow-up comment. With that conservation, if we can get water usage down, it's less we have to expand or grow the system. It may be less wastewater that's making its way to our treatment plant, which we know is nearing its capacity. So that would be
Okay, thank you. Ron, you have your hand up.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just a bit of history. The rates, they were set up sort of flat rate and user rates, and it was probably, I'm going to guess here, maybe 15, it might even be longer than that ago, quite a while ago. But the theory behind it was the fixed rate covered the costs. If everybody in the entire on the entire system went to Florida, what would it cost to maintain the system? Because obviously, any point in time, somebody could come home and have to turn the tap on. So we have to have that system running, no matter if a drop doesn't go through that system. So we tried to split out the costs of operation. What are the basics? What do we need, regardless of any usage? And that's how we determined the rate of the flat charges. But like I said, that was at least 15 years ago. So it hasn't been dealt with since then. So, and I know Jeff and I have talked about this, and I believe the previous public works manager and I have had that discussion too, that at some point in time, you got to say, okay, let's have another look at it. And is this the best way to do it? So to your point, with an eye on climate change and that kind of thing. And yeah, if we can conserve water, there's benefits not only for water coming in, but also water going out that ends up at the sewage treatment plant. So yes.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, I'm just going back to the one slide and looking at, Jeff, the 1.5 increase in water costs from Lake Huron. And I'm just wondering, I'm just curious as to who sets that rate. And I'm just wondering why there would be an increase. You were getting the water from Lake Huron, so I'm just wondering why there's an increase there.
Well, I probably could let the mayor.
I can answer that.
Oh, I'm sorry,
but,
Matt. Answer that for me.
So everybody is aware that we do buy our water through the Lake Huron supply system, and they do run the plants that bring in the water, filter the water, clean the water, and then pump it to the different municipalities through the pipeline that they maintain. So that whole organization does cost money, and it is run, I think, in my opinion, very efficiently. I've seen some of the stuff come through, but yeah, no, it is something just like anybody else has to go and get a product. We have to get our water product from them. So.
I might just add to what Jeff said, as much as I love to swim in Lake Huron, I don't think I'd necessarily just drink the water right out of the lake. So it does have to go through the process and the plant up there. And I think we've all driven past the plant. It is quite an incredible facility. And I also wanted to make the point that the Lake Huron system always makes a financial projection for 5 years where they predict what their rates are going to be. And all the municipalities are given that. But for the last 2 years, their rate prediction has actually been lowered. They had predicted that it would be a 3% increase on all of the users, or I should say the member facilities, municipalities. But that increase, because of usage, because of efficiencies, has been lowered to 1.5%. So, and that's been for the last 2 years. They've been able to come in at a lower rate increase to all the municipalities. Did you have any follow-up to that, Daniel?
No, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And Councillor Hodgins was kind of going in the direction of maybe looking at how we charge for our wastewater and water systems. And I guess I just had a couple questions. Jeff, some of our neighbors have gone through a process with a consultant looking at, their systems and the cost of maintaining them over the years. I don't think that we're at that. I think that we do a great job at our asset management, maintaining them. I think we have a good handle on what our future needs are. I guess my concern is maybe rather than kind of looking at these at the cost of the system on a yearly basis, would there be an appetite to maybe change that to again maybe mirror something like the primary water supply system does, and have a projection for what maybe the rates will look like over the course of 4 years or so, understanding that things happen and things could change, but it might give the end user at least the idea of what the cost of the system will be over the course of so many years.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, that's exactly part of the whole process here is this year to year. We need a bigger plan. We do have a financial plan in place that we look at replacing our systems or our capital infrastructure. And I think the next step is to introduce a 5-year plan or maybe a 4-year plan if we don't want to we have to be careful with council and that sort of thing. But the goal would be to have to do this and have a plan in place for the next few years. And I'd love to bring that back to the new a council, and we got to be careful of the election year, but
Mhm.
I know a lot of our neighbors are doing that. And like you said, it doesn't mean that it's written in stone. If something were to change throughout the year, if we did have a surplus or a deficit one year, we could address that at this time of year rather than trying to go through this whole process of trying to set rates, each year. So yeah, no, that would be that also would be as part of that goal of resetting the rates.
I guess the other question I have is I know that a number of our neighbors have a storm water charge that is then obviously charged on residents. And I just wondered, and maybe this isn't the time for that, but what is that for? And I mean, we don't have that charge.
No, not at this, Madam Mayor, not at this point. We don't have that charge. And I was part of a municipality that we did bring it in. And as communities grow, you gain stormwater management ponds, and you gain a lot of infrastructure in the road, storm main, that it will need maintenance. And at this point, we don't have a budget for a lot of that infrastructure, one, to be replaced or even to be maintained. Now, we have to walk a fine line here because we do use municipal drains in this municipality still as one of our main sources of outlet. Particularly Granton, Clandyboy, and Lucan all use municipal drains. The Bend drain through Lucan is still classified as a municipal drain. So if we do repairs on it, everybody pays. It complicates things, and it doesn't create an infrastructure for those replacements that we will need eventually. Cleaning out retention ponds are not cheap, and someday we're going to have to address that. So at this point, though, that's a different conversation at a different time. But yeah, it will be something we'll have to address at some point.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any other questions or comments from council? Okay, we do have one member of the public who is a registered participant, and at this time, I would ask Ms. Cook if you have any questions or comments on what has been presented by our Public Works Manager, and it's the opportunity for you to express concern over the proposed rates. And you can unmute, and we'll be able to hear you if you got comment.
No questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. All right. One thing I might just say as we bring this part of the session to close, I think one of the hardest things to kind of wrap your head around are these systems that essentially most residents in our municipality use, but understanding that it is a user pay system. And one thing, and I'll be honest, Jeff and I have talked about this in the past, and maybe the timing would be, obviously the start of the next term of council, but to do a wastewater system 101, not only for the benefit of new council, but also for our residents, because it is a lot to understand. And when you get a property tax bill, you think that that's what it's all for, and then you get these charges for a system. And I think that anytime we can provide any more education to our residents as to how these systems work and why they work the way they do, the better. So that would just be my kind of 2 cents to say maybe that's something we look at doing in the next term of council.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, I think that this will end the public meeting session. And if I am correct, and I'm going to be looking at Tina's got her camera off, so I'll look to Ron, my clerk. We can't pass the motion in this session. We'll for the water rates. We'll do it all at the end after the discussion of the whole budget.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
You can do it now. you could do it either way, but you definitely certainly can do it now.
Okay, all right, so that's not a problem doing it during the public meeting, I guess, because we're not really going in and out
No,
like we
you
used to.
can go in or out. So.
Okay, all right. So I guess I would look to council whether or not you want to pass a motion now with regards to the water and sewer rates, or wait and do it all at once when we kind of firm up the budget. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Let's do it now. Okay, so then what I would look for in a motion, as I just happen to have one in front of me, is that the report number PW-01-2022 be received, and further that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph accepts the recommendation of the Public Works Manager as presented on February 1st, 2022 regarding the water and wastewater rates for 2022 as follows. And that would be 0.053 cent per cubic meter increase to usage rates for both water and wastewater, a 2% increase to capital levy rates for both water and wastewater, and a 3% increase to bulk water rate, with each being effective January 1st, 2022, and further that staff be directed to bring forward the equivalent amendment to the fees bylaw. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, so with that, I will turn it back over to Catherine to finish our budget discussion.
Okay, so to wrap up the budget discussion, now we've presented all the budgets, and now it's up to council to decide to consider a motion to accept the proposed 2022 budget as amended now, because we did one change for the fire boards with a 2% municipal tax rate increase, and then also to decide on where to put the budgeted surplus, which reserve you'd like to direct that to, or increase spending in other areas. And then once that's decided, in the future, we'll bring a final tax rate levy bylaw to present on a future meeting once we know all the county decisions.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Manders.
I like Catherine's recommendation of where to split it between the two areas. I think it was building and parks, and also parks and rec, and then also the bringing the fire hall up to 10% and adjusting that. And I think we'll be, I think we also need to be aware that, when I first looked at this, the 2% increase and having that surplus, maybe a discussion about lower rate increase, to be honest, but I think, I'd be naive to think that every line item and expense item is probably going to be a little higher than budgeted. That's for sure with inflation this year. So anyways, good job. And that's I would support that if anyone else wants to.
Catherine?
My recommendation was to split between the road construction and parks and rec, not the building.
Sorry. I agree with.
Okay, further comment. Okay, I would just echo exactly what the Deputy Mayor said, and I do think that to think that every line item is going to come in where we think it is naive. When the inflation rate was a bit over 4% last month, we don't know what the months to come will be, and we have to be mindful of those costs and the unknown as this year progresses. So if there is not any other further discussion, then the motion in front of us would be that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph accepts the draft 2022 budget as amended by the Treasurer on February 1st, 2022, with a 2% municipal tax rate increase, and further that the budgeted surplus be directed and I guess split between the construction and parks and recreation reserve fund. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, any further comment, Catherine, as before you close off, before we let you take a glass of water?
So I just want to thank the members of the Finance Committee and staff for all their work on this, getting to this point. And thank you, Council, for all your questions and input. And yeah, move forward now. Thank you very much.
Well, just on behalf of council, to Catherine and all of the staff, and to Jeff for the work that he's done with the water and wastewater budgets and the plan there. Just want to express our thanks. It's not an easy process to go through, and it does take a lot of work. It doesn't happen overnight. And so I want to thank everybody for their commitment to it, as I said in my opening remarks, to the Budget Committee, but really importantly to Catherine for your leadership on this. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to our through the agenda, and we've got the council minutes from January 18th in front of us. And I know that you've all looked at them, and if there's nothing that needs to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the January 18th, 2022 minutes to be approved as circulated. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. On to the business arising. I don't think that there's much there. Certainly it's all ongoing. And I don't think that there was anything that needed to be added from our last meeting. So we'll move on to correspondence. There's been 2 letters in our correspondence that have been highlighted by staff. The first one is a request from Theo and Adrian Van Rostel, and maybe I'll get Ron just to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this request came forth formally. I will note that I have had 2 other requests regarding the same parcel within the last month. So somebody found this house and it has hit the street. So the proper way to do this is to formally request staff to make a report back on what process council could follow if they choose to dispose of this. This is a 66-foot parcel that was kept when the larger lots on the south side of Nicoline to the west of Saintsbury were developed. The thought at that point was that that 66 feet would then become a road allowance to the further development that we now know as Watson Street and Radcliffe Crescent. So fast forward a few years, that development was built without using that 66-foot wide stretch. So now it is basically I don't believe it's much use to us at all. There is, however, a sanitary sewer line that runs along there, so it is appropriate that we take time for staff to look at those issues and report back to council.
Okay, thanks for that, Ron. It's funny because somebody did ask me about that parcel of land, and I asked you, and you said, "Oh, it's a hot piece," because you'd had these 2 requests. I didn't even realize that we owned that, so that was very interesting to me. Any comment on that? But I do think that certainly that makes sense to have staff bring back a report as to what the options would be to deal with that property. But any other comment from council? Deputy Mayor, did you have your hand up?
Well, I guess you somewhat answered it by options, because I assume one of the options will be also to keep it and maintain it and maybe use it more. We've talked about having areas for, again, as denser and denser we get, and we get into our buildings, apartment buildings in Lucan, to a number we haven't seen before. I don't know the property enough to know, can that be just a treed sitting area for someone to go and just to like not a playground equipment, but just a place to go and sit and quiet time outside. So anyways, I assume there'll be a number of, is it of use to the ratepayers that own it will be very important to know. Thank you.
Okay. Ron, do you need a verbal motion to direct you to bring a report back?
Sorry, I believe, Madam Mayor, there is a motion in the on the agenda there.
Oh, there is too. I'm looking right at it. Okay. That council receives the request letter dated January 18th, 2022 from Theo and Adrian Van Rostel, and further directs staff to bring back an information report regarding the specific request. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan, Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed. That's carried. Then the second one is a annual letter that we received from the health unit regarding mosquito larvicide. But Ron, if you just want to kind of give us a quick recap of what it's about.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is the annual, like you said, the annual application of larvicide that you'll see the colored paint dots beside the catch basins. And so what the county does is they contract out a company to come around and treat each one of those manholes. And there's probably, help me out, Jeff, 3 times a year that they go around and treat these manholes. And what they're trying to do is prevent the breeding of mosquitoes that produce the West Nile virus. So.
Okay. There is the motion in front of us to support the local action by the MLHU to reduce the risk of West Nile virus, including larviciding catch basins and other surface water locations within our jurisdiction, and further direct staff to send a letter of support to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change indicating the same. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Westman, Councillor Hodgins, all opposed, and that's carried. There are a number of items that we did receive that have not been highlighted, and just wondering if council wanted any of those pulled for discussion. The one that I would like to speak to, or perhaps take move forward on, is the one from North Middlesex, and that's in with regards to the drainage infrastructure in Ontario and the concerns that many municipalities have with how CN deals with drainage and the CN overpasses of that. And while we do not in our community have any of that infrastructure left, many of our neighbors do, and it is of great concern to, as close as Perth South, as far south as Southwest Middlesex, Thames Centre. All of these municipalities have concerns about how CN does not come to the table and address drainage concerns. And you can see that OMAFRA did send out a letter to municipalities. I think we received it back in December, and we didn't move on it. And I know that many of our neighboring communities have lobbied with the Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Infrastructure. They did so at Roma. And I think it is gaining some momentum. I know the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus has also taken this up, but I do think since a number of our neighbors have this as a concern, that we should pass a letter of support, or a motion of support that is very similar to the one that was passed by North Middlesex, and then it be circulated as North Middlesex did. And I would be looking for my council to support that. Any comment? Councillor Hodgins.
I would support that motion.
Great. And I would look to you to make that motion then. And I would look to Ron and Tina as the best way to handle it, just to a motion of support of the request from OMAFRA, or just to pass the same motion that North Middlesex did. Ron.
I would suggest, Madam Mayor, that we use the same wording that that North Middlesex has used.
Okay. So that motion, that wording is that the correspondence from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Drainage Infrastructure in Ontario be received, and that the Council of North Middlesex amplify support of the Ontario Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs letter dated December 23rd, 2021. And then there is a corresponding letter that the mayor wrote, and we can probably use that similarly. So Councillor Hodgins, we'll make that. Thank you. And a seconder for that, Councillor Regan. All opposed, and that's carried. And thank you very much for that. If there weren't any other correspondence to be pulled, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive items 10.1 through 10.3 for information purposes. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Westman, Councillor Regan. All opposed, and that's carried. Moving on to committee reports. Blue Water.
We had a meeting. Probably the two biggest things were a real shortage of drivers the previous month anyways, due to not being able to come to work due to COVID or contact tracing. So really short staff. And then the other thing was there a real uptick in unfortunately people putting metal, thinking that it's recyclable in the blue water in the boxes, and it's really causing issues as far as damage goes. And it's the volume of metal actually getting put in there is at the highest level it's ever been. It's valuable, but it's not recyclable to blue water recycling, and it's causing issues. So I'm not sure they're going to work on a newsletter to work with each municipality to reinforce that message or not. But those were the two things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions for the Deputy Mayor on that? Okay, CEDC.
Nothing to report yet. We're looking at probably setting up a meeting end of February.
Okay, you were a little echoey there. Any questions for Lisa? We'll look for details of an upcoming meeting then. Lake Huron, there is nothing to report there. Fire boards, nothing to report there. Will the fire boards be meeting? I guess we usually meet in February.
I will be reaching out to all the members to set up 2 meeting dates. Yes.
Okay, excellent. ABCA and Upper Thames.
Yeah, we had an Upper Thames meeting last week. Obviously, there's continuing concern about the reduction in funding from the province and that whole ongoing problem. We're looking at the different areas that we work in, and how these changes in funding is going to affect our core programs. And the one that concerns us, I think, well, there's many, but species at risk, these are issues that affect the entire watershed. So we're working on that. Staff has been amazing. Like they're just such pros in what they do. With the reduction of funding from the province, it affects our ability to be able to negotiate grants from the federal government as well. So there's kind of a snowball effect of how this is impacting our whole overall operation. One thing that came up, and there was some discussion about it, was with wastewater treatment plants and the bypass during storm surges. And I don't know that it affects us a whole lot, but some municipalities have had issues with materials getting bypassed into the watershed. So we're looking at working with municipalities to help reduce that. I mean, we've noticed over the last couple of years that the 100-year storm surge seems to be a fairly regular thing rather than being 100 years. It happens often more than once a year. So that may be the new norm. So, obviously we'll have to adjust thinking, and that impacts municipalities that are managing their waste treatment plants. They have to contend with that as well. And we do as a municipality. So you'll know that the budget has been circulated to municipalities, and we're there. We've worked out our budget. One thing that came up, and it's sort of an ongoing problem, but I won't get too specific, but the need for site alteration bylaws kind of came up because there's an issue, and I represent not only Lucan Biddulph on the Upper Thames, but I also represent Thames Centre. And in our community, as well as theirs, there has been occasions where property owners, farmers have felt the need to draw in massive amounts of fill and affect water courses and marshlands and what have you, wetlands. So, I've reached out to Ron and to Jeff, and I'm going to mention it to council as well that it might be an idea for us to be looking into having some bylaw in place to help give us a little bit of control over site alteration so that we don't have issues with large amounts of fill. Now, there was a change in provincial statutes where you cannot draw massive amounts of fill without proper permitting through the conservation authorities and municipalities. So these are things that, are going to help limit that a little bit, but I'll leave it with council to consider the idea of implementing a bylaw for site alterations to give us some of that control. Anyhow, that's about it. Salvo Bayfield will be meeting next month, and as well the Upper Thames will have our annual general meeting, and hopefully there's some good information coming out of that. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you for that update, Alex. Any comments or questions? I guess just on bringing a bylaw forth, have you presented, I know you said you've talked to staff about that. Have you asked them to bring a report to council, or how would that work?
Well, it was just the other day that I reached out to Ron and Jeff, and I feel I'd like to give them lots of time to really look into it and find out what's involved. I know that our neighbor to the south, North Middlesex, has a bylaw in place. That's what I've been advised by our regulatory people at the Upper Thames. So it might be an idea to reach out to them, and I believe that's what they're doing. So
Okay.
Okay. So it's something to give consideration. I'm looking forward to hearing more from Ron and or Jeff, most likely Jeff, I would think. And so I'm just looking for some solutions so that we don't have to contend with some of the problems that our neighboring municipalities have had to deal with, because it can get out of hand in a big hurry when 100 or 200 truckloads of fill are brought into a single property and wetlands are being filled in. And in the case that I was referring to, an actual water course, a stream was filled in. So these are things that once done, it's pretty hard to undo it. And, if we're able to kind of have a level of oversight and regulatory control beforehand, it might help save a lot of issues down the road, including legal costs and, forced reconstruction and restoration of a property. So anyhow, I'll just leave that in everyone's mind to think about, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you for that. Parks and Recreation, Paul.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. We had a meeting just last Wednesday, January 26th. It was a very productive, very good meeting, just mostly updating the group with the projects that we have going. Obviously, the big announcement of the project moving forward with the community center. So there's a really good insight from the group on that, on the lifeguards, as I mentioned before, in the pool. Meeting minutes will be in the next council package. But if you are curious, the meeting is live on YouTube right now for you to watch. So the next meeting we're planning is for February 23rd.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions for Paul? Okay, finance. I think Catherine's done everything there, but we've got the draft committee minutes in front of us. They are draft, and they would be passed at the next finance committee meeting, which won't happen for some time now, but they are there for your information. Moving on to staff reports, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few updates. Of course, everybody's aware of the new emergency orders that came down or that changed yesterday. I'm sure Paul is going to talk a little bit about that with regards to the community center. However, indoor gathering limits are now increased to 10 and outdoors to 25. The indoor dining, gyms, retailers, and museums can reopen to 50% capacity, as well as indoor religious services, rites, and ceremonies can take place at 50% capacity. Of course, as before, proof of vaccination continues to be required and applies in all indoor settings. We talked a little bit about the fire boards. There'll be a couple of meetings coming up. 2-on-1 day. I don't want to steal Lisa DeBoer's thunder. If Lisa was going to talk about it, I won't talk about it. She's off camera there, but anyway, I don't see her. I'll talk about it. 2-on-1 day is coming up, February 11th. Bettina Weber, our community emergency management coordinator through the county, has distributed some material to Lisa. Lisa is going to try and put and promote it on social media. I don't think there's enough awareness out there. I think, you know, I think it's a fair comment for me to say the average person, if you ask them on the street, would have no idea what 2-on-1 was. So I think we're going to try and do a little bit more communication to get that awareness out there. 2-on-1 is municipal information. It's government information. It's social information. It's a number that I believe when you call 2-on-1, I think it calls down to somewhere around Windsor, but they've got all our information as well as social services, things like that. So they are equipped to handle more or less not emergency calls. We don't want to get it confused with 911. It's municipally and government related services. So that is coming up on February 11th. I have a Middlesex County CAO meeting set for this Thursday afternoon. Those, Madam Mayor, and she was warden, participated in those. I think they're very, very valuable source of information. It does give us a chance to talk about what's happening not only in our municipality, but it gives us a chance to hear what's happening everywhere else. And we do get to brainstorm on a number of issues. So the last item I do have is I did get a request from Spreed Associates. They have verbally requested permission to waive, or have asked for permission to waive the building permit fee for the phase 2 of the Community Memorial Center project. According to Spreed Associates, the cost of the municipal building permit for a municipality or for a municipally owned project is not part of the tendered price. It is typically waived. Administratively, it doesn't make any sense for the municipality to issue itself a check. So unless council has any objections, I would ask for a motion, and a verbal motion is fine, to waive the actual building permit fee.
Okay, questions or comments on that? Councillor Hodgins.
Sorry, no question or comment. I would just support that motion if that's fine with our building official and all.
Okay. Councillor Regan.
Let's support that. I would second that motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So Councillor Hodgins made the motion. Councillor Regan seconded it. Any further discussion? All opposed? That's carried. Is that it, Ron?
That's all I have. Thank you, Nadine.
Any questions for Ron at this time? Okay, Tina.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, there is a report in front of you just regarding an update to the records management policy. Sorry, I had it up in front of me here. There it is. So we did have an audit that was completed by the MTO with regards to our processes involved in when we retrieve information for parking tickets. The audit was completed 2 years ago, but the results of that were just received recently. We did reach out to member municipalities to see if they've experienced something similar, and enough Southwest Middlesex did, and others had the same question as we were looking for. So there was a paragraph that was suggested to add to our records management policy because the MTO records don't fall specifically within our TOMRIMS retention destruction period. This paragraph will give us the ability to follow the legislative requirement for destruction of those records. So it's just a slight amendment to satisfy that requirement and update the policy.
Okay, questions on that for Tina? Okay, we do have a motion in front of us that council receives report number CL-02-2022 for information and adopts the updated records management policy number 102-01-2022. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders, Councillor Westman, all opposed, and that's carried. Do you have anything else, Tina?
I do actually. The council meeting schedule for 2022, you may recall when we set it, we altered the dates in March just to coincide with the OGRA conference. The conference dates were originally scheduled for February 27th to March 1st. Those dates have now been pushed to April. They're hoping to continue with the in-person conference the middle of April. So because that conference has been pushed back, we could realign our council meeting dates for next month to the first and third meeting of the month, which would fall in line with a normal schedule. So that would be March 1st and March 15th as opposed to March 8th and March 22nd. So I guess I'm just looking for support from council if they'd like to alter the council meeting schedule to reflect those dates.
Just okay, then we just do need a verbal motion or a motion to amend the meeting schedule. And that's all it needs to be, I think, for Tina. Councillor Westman will make that motion. A seconder will be Councillor Regan. All opposed, and that's carried. Okay, any questions for Tina? All right, thank you very much. No building. Anything more in finance? I don't think.
I just wanted to say that one thing quick, that this week we're generating the interim tax bill, and those will be sent out, and the first payment will be due the end of February.
Great, thank you for that. And I believe there's going to be a new communication tool from the county included in the mail out with that, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So, okay, any questions for Catherine on that? We do have a planning matter in front of us tonight, and so Dan's joined us for that, and it is with regards to a site plan amendment. And so with that, I will welcome Dan and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mayor and members of council. So included on tonight's agenda is an amending site plan agreement for a property that's located at 385 Sainsbury Line, also known as Big L's Storage. The amending agreement, as proposed, includes an expansion of the existing storage facility through an addition to the main structure that's located on site currently, as well as the construction of 4 additional storage buildings. It also includes the establishment of a fire access route or extension thereof, fencing along Sainsbury, on-site landscaping also along Sainsbury Line. It incorporates barrier-free accessibility standards in terms of parking and access, parking stalls, grading, stormwater management, as well as on-site servicing. We have reviewed plans as well as external agencies, including Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority, as this land is partially regulated. We have no further comments or concerns with the proposed design as included on the agenda. So as such, staff are satisfied that the proposal does meet the bylaw, and we do recommend that council execute the amending agreement to permit the expansion of the existing facility. Thanks, and I'm certainly here and available to answer any questions that council may have.
Great, thank you very much for that. Dan, are there any questions or comments on this report? Okay, seeing none, then the motion in front of us is that council receives report number PL-01-2022 and accepts the planner's recommendation. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed, and that's carried. Thank you very much, Dan. Don't you wish all the planning applications and reports went as easily as that one? Okay, moving on to Public Works. Jeff.
Hi, Madam Mayor. I do have one report tonight. It's a report that got its start last year. So it is a report on the wastewater operator contract extension. The purpose of this report is to present council with information on extending the wastewater operator contract. As we know, the municipality is the owner of the system, the wastewater treatment and collection system. The system consists of two subsystems, Lucan and the Granton system. And currently, the Ontario Clean Water Agency, otherwise known as Aqua, is our current operator of the system. In 2013, Aqua was awarded the wastewater contract through an RFP. The contract was for a 10-year term and will expire at the end of December 31st, or at the end of this year, December 31st. In 2001, the water operator contract was extended to December 31st, 2027. At that time, there was, we looked at extending the water contract to a certain period of time, which would get us past the expansion of the wastewater plant, which then we could look at keeping the wastewater operator along to make sure that that project, the stability of that project continues. We wanted both projects to end at the same time, or both contracts to end at the same time. And the thinking behind that is when we go to reissue an RFP for services, that we can combine the two and potentially get a better price and contract if we combine the two. So having done that, I did reach out to Aqua and to discuss whether that they were interested in extending the contract. And in those discussions, we did come up with an amending agreement. In the amending agreement is included, but in that agreement, in the discussions, Aqua did request that their annual price, which is the initial price of the contract, include an additional 8 hours per month of operator time and 2 hours per month of clerical time. And through discussions that we did look at the operators, there are more time being spent with dual operators working together, pulling pumps and that sort of thing. Just from health and safety and ministry guidelines, those standards have come a long way since 2013. The clerical time also is based on additional testing and ministry requirements. This request would result in a 4% increase in the operating or the initial annual price that was set there. So that was really the big one. And there is another increase here, and I'd just like to point out, I must apologize that I did make an error. I should have caught this before the report went out. But Aqua did request an increase in wage callouts beyond the normal operation. In my report, I did list it at 50%, and that's not, I should have caught that. That's not what they requested. The amount estimated is about $700 a year, not $7,000. And that reflects back into the rates really only changing about 4 to 6%. A lot of them is only $5 an hour more, and that's based from 2013 to now. So, like I said, I apologize for that. I should have caught that ahead of time. So, that call out labor is basically for after hours, long weekends, after hour call outs, or anything that is not part of the normal operation of the plant. So if an electrician has to be called in to fix a pump, or if an alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's when those rates would take place. And those rates right now are the standard operator rate would go from $55 an hour to $65 an hour. And, so that would be the biggest jump. And so I don't, in my opinion, it's not unreasonable considering we've already had 10 years in there. I did, when we did review the amending agreement, a lot of it is about wording. and about legal definitions and that sort of thing. So I did have legal and insurance representatives review the amending agreement. They did provide input on the agreement and on wording changes. So that and they were both favorable on the amendment agreement that was finalized or is presented here. In an overview of the amendment agreement, I will just go through the highlights of it. Article 4 is being replaced, and it's being replaced to recognize that the annual price increase and that we are increasing the amounts that through capital expense or unexpected expenses that Aqua can spend up to $2,000. In the current agreement, it's $1,000. So we are increasing that to $2,000. There's adjustments in the words and description and definitions. And excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's in Article 4. In Article 7, there is wording and description and definitions of functions and phrases that are changing, and that's in Article 7, which is just a general description of items, as well as Schedules A, facilities, B, definitions, Schedule E, and list of pre-existing conditions. It really, all that is wording changes in those items. In Schedule D is the insurance. There is a couple of slight changes in the insurance schedule. For instance, the deductible on the pollution liability has been changed for the year 2021, as well as the reporting period has been extended to 90 days. Again, not a lot of changes here, just minor, which falls in line with what the industry is doing here. This is again approved through our own insurance, through our own insurance representative. And then the last change is that there is 2 clerical forms that have been added, Schedule G and H, and that's just to basically better handle how we communicate and how we spend our money and process the process how we work with one another. Options to move forward with this is obviously is option 1 is we can turn down the extension. We can move to an RFP and go that route. This would promote competitive pricing. I think we did talk about that when we looked at the water operator extension. Option 2 is to accept the amending agreement as presented, or option 3 is to turn down the current amending agreement but continue to negotiate with Aqua on the extension and the terms that are in the agreement. My recommendation to council is to extend the wastewater operator agreement based on the terms that have been provided in the agreement. I consider the additional hours reasonable, and I do believe that the call-in rates do need to rise, and that with the agreement from the legal and the insurance representatives that we used, they were both deemed that from their field of expertise, this agreement is both reasonable and fair to move forward with. The increases impact of budget will be recognized in the wastewater operational budget. And again, it is not a large change from the original agreement. It is about a 4% increase on the annual fee right now. And other than that, there is no real out changes other than the $700 if based on other call-outs. I won't go through the strategic plan or the community wellness plan. But yeah, that's my recommendation, Madam Mayor, is to move forward with it, but I do open it for comments and discussion.
Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. Deputy Mayor Manders.
I'll be a little shorter. I agree with you. Number 2. No, I think you're right. It just the request seems very reasonable, and obviously you're very satisfied with their service and good report. Obviously, by the way, and the increases again, and everything seems very reasonable with knowing their service too. So an RFP could put us in a worse spot financially with the same result, just the cost of that for staff time and everything else. So no, good report, and I certainly would make the motion to accept your recommendation. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Any other further comments or questions? I think it's important to note that an RFP for something like this it wouldn't happen overnight either. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that to develop that. So I think the background information that you gave to support your recommendation, Jeff, was great. So with that in mind, Deputy Mayor has said he would make the motion to approve the presented amending agreement and receive Public Works Report 02-2022 and extend the wastewater operator contract with Aqua. So Deputy Mayor Manders and a seconder. Councillor Regan, all opposed. And that's carried. You have anything else, Jeff?
No, Madam Mayor, that's it for me tonight.
Okay, any questions for Jeff? Okay, moving on to Parks and Recreation. Paul.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. There's two reports in front of council tonight. The first is regarding the lifeguard reimbursement program. Council a while back had challenged staff to explore if there was some sort of reimbursement program we could do to help attract qualified NL lifeguards to our staff. We do offer a very competitive, fair wage, but it still was not enough for the previous pool season. So given that, how can we be a premier employer, help try and attract more staff? Maybe part of that is, we have some sort of incentive. So initially, Abby Vandermeeren had presented her findings to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. In this, she had presented a plan for we had kind of discussed over a 4-year period to increase chances for staff to return, but some of the comments that came back at the PRAC meeting were, maybe, it's a one and done, and you just hope that they really enjoy their experience. They're very thankful of, that investment in them, that, they are returning because, it's not a huge amount of money to encourage them to come back every year. So maybe a one-time, money talks for that age group would be potential. So it's a potential of, at 10 guards, $2,825 would be a one-time payment for the 10 guards. So it's not a significant, huge amount of money, and it might be enough just to have that kind of investment incentive to help, recruit this staff. So I put it forth to council. I know at the Parks and Recreation Committee, we discussed a lot about, is there going to be a pool season? Is there not going to be a pool season? But I think what's important here is that council gives staff direction, that this is something that we're interested in applying to, as February is coming up. Well, it is February now, sorry. And that's usually when we start recruiting. So, if we come out of this construction meeting finding out we can have a pool, it's our goal to start recruiting right away. So if this is a good tool to have in our toolbox to help recruit staff. So I put the recommendation in front of council that this is to be received and supported. So I put it up to council for comments, questions, or concerns.
Okay. Okay, comments, sorry, on Paul's recommendation. Deputy Mayor.
I support it. I mean, I think probably regardless of the pool, I think this expense and this tool, we would use going forward. So I think making it known, providing council supports it. I mean, actually, if the pool doesn't open, it'd be good to see the feedback. At the end of the day, if we don't have lifeguards, we shouldn't be investing in the pool. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other further comment? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks. I was at the Parks and Recreation Committee, and there was a lot of good discussion, a lot of feedback from all of the members of the committee, and it was great to hear all the ideas. I think they were sort of, discussing the incentive and what would be the best option. I guess we were looking at doing it over a 4-year term, just so that we don't pay out that amount and then maybe lose that person, and then it's kind of like lost cost. So there's a lot of ideas and thoughts in that meeting. I'm supportive of whichever way we go with this. I'm supportive of, I guess, putting over 4 years. I'd also be supportive of the lump sum, the total amount over 1, or there was also the option presented in the meeting of maybe 50% 1 year, and then if they come back another year, they can get the other 50%. So I'm not sure if I have a preferred approach. Maybe the one in the middle, the 50%, if we do have those concerns that, the lump sum amount, and then it's maybe money that may be lost, but I'm definitely supportive of it, whichever way we go. It's not like it's lost money, it's going into our community and people, young people working in our community. So I'm supportive of whichever motion we take. I don't know if do we have to make that decision now, I guess, or is Paul looking for that direction?
Paul?
If I may, it's also important for council to understand too, we do already offer an incentive to renew NL. So like the renewing of it, we've already covered in the past. It's a very common practice. It's just this would be the first, getting of that NL. But yes, it would be favorable for staff if council could make a motion tonight, just so once we get that nod of the head from the construction meeting that we can go ahead, we can include this in the hiring package for the lifeguards to help hopefully attract those guards that we couldn't attract before.
Okay. Any further comment, Jayden?
Well, I guess I'd maybe make the motion, or my comment would be to maybe go with the 50%, maybe paid out over 2 years rather than 4 years. I think maybe the $70 maybe is not going to be enough of an incentive. So that would be my thought and my comment.
Okay, thank you for that. I was surprised, actually. I was expecting the cost of the program to be more than the $283, actually. I thought that it was more, so that kind of surprised me, actually. Any further discussion? I think that, I heard the comments from the PRAC committee. I would agree, $70 over 4 years, that may not be the, the lure to get in. But I would be supportive of over the 2 years for sure. I think that is reasonable. Any other comments? If that's, then I would look to Councillor Hodgins for a nod of your head that that's the motion you're going to put on the floor for the 50% over 2 years, or I guess to pay it over 2 years. A mover and a seconder for that. Or Councillor Hodgins has moved it. A seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan, is there any further discussion? All opposed? That's carried. Okay.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The second report in front of you, we had a resident approach us with a very good partnership opportunity at the Lucan Community Memorial Center, so Lucan Biddulph Community Memorial Center, to have video streaming included. Their company has acquired the rights to a certain 180-degree camera, and they really want to run kind of like a guinea pig pilot project, because their intent is to have this come forward and that they can sell it to other arenas as a really good option for video streaming. Is the pandemic's taught us people not being able to access our facility. It's a great option, and it does improve our accessibility. There's people that can't leave their houses that might want to see their grandkids playing, might want to see their grandkids figure skating, might want to see what events are going on inside, maybe even Canada Day going on inside, just seeing people run about. It's a very good opportunity, I think, especially with the expansion of the community center. There's opportunity that we can build this project and actually stream it throughout our facility. You know, there's events where we have like, you know, say the Fire and Ice events or Junior C's where we have like maybe a wing night in the main hall that you can actually take that footage and extend it to those other parts of the facility. You know, that's great for our facility and our community. I think it really puts us on the spot of what we can do. Streaming is becoming more common in community centers. There was some concerns brought up at the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee about the legalities. Obviously, you know, if there's children that don't want to be, if their parents, sorry, don't want them to be on cameras. This is something I've brought up since day one. It's an easily addressed issue, I believe, of being able to cut off the feed. We would look into that more before we actually went forward with actually committing to a streaming service. But I think the idea of this memo to council would be get council support to kind of go forward with this partnership and start the pilot project. And then as we do that, the legalities would be part of what we'd explore before we actually committed to streaming services. And I think the main thing that's come up on that is that as long as it's not recorded, it's not a recorded image, it's a live image, it really kind of gets away from a lot of those legal issues. So, fantastic opportunity. It's been presented by Scott Burrell, who's a member of our community. And, he thought his company has this opportunity. What better place to try it out than in his own backyard? So he's bringing something to Lucan Biddulph that he's, part of and proud of. So I put it forth to council for questions and comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Any comments from council? Well, the hands go up. Councillor Hodgins.
It was interesting to be at the committee, and I guess, there was a lot of support from members of the committee, liking the idea of it. There obviously are those concerns with privacy and having this live stream thing going on. Like, I don't know if we have to have signage there. I feel like maybe moving ahead with the partnership or whatever the arrangement is exactly, who operates this this system and how it's controlled, and I still think there's a lot of questions. So I know you alluded to in the committee about the Municipal Surveillance Act. So I was hoping to see a bit more information about that and maybe get some more information about the legality and the privacy concerns before we move into, I guess, the partnership or any sort of agreement with this service. Some comments.
Paul.
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, and the main thing in the Municipal Surveillance Act, signage, key, right? So like anything like signage, we should have signage up. Not recording is a key thing, and also not being able to identify, like say if someone's holding a piece of paper, you can't zoom in and directly read what's on that person's piece of paper. So I think the fact that it would be a 180 camera and it's above distance would really kind of take away our responsibility a lot in that case. I think, you can't identify 100% everything. Like, you can't see what someone's reading on their phone. You can't see what, someone's face like perfectly. I think that would be a huge part of that. One thing I would say, I think maybe we should approach this as a two-step project. Maybe the first step would be start exploring with this group, because I think part of that, part of our legalities would be the functionality of the cameras and how the not surveillance, sorry, because it's not surveillance, it's streaming, how it all works, determining that. And then I think that then we should bring it before it would go live. Maybe that's the second step, we bring it before council, because I think those are things we need to identify before, to identify our legalities and our responsibilities.
To follow up, Councillor Hodgins.
I'll maybe hold off. Let our
Okay. Councillor Regan, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Paul, I'm just wondering, we have 100% control over this, right? We can opt out at any time if, I mean, we'd have to maybe go back and review this, maybe in the fall, or if we go forward with this. But again, I'm just concerned about having 100% control over this and being able to turn that camera on and off if we have to.
I believe that's the intention, and I think that's why, as it was presented, that like the licensing that we would have to purchase for streaming would be ours, because it would be our control. So within that, it becomes our control. The only thing that this company would do at all is actually the camera and the installation, just kind of help set it up, play around with it, perfect how it works. So it becomes almost like a demonstration piece. So I think in the end, it would be 100% ours. The streaming rights should be 100% ours. Then again, as per some of the concerns, the legalities become 100% ours. So I do think, and I think that's why, you know, the more we talk about this, I think maybe a 2-step process is the way to do this. You know, step 1, we go forward and start exploring this project and what it would look like, maybe kind of flesh it out. Step 2, we go live and we go to streaming and how the actual committing to the service.
Follow up, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Paul, so what would be, is there any cost to staff that we have to train staff have to maintain the camera, turning it on and off? Is there anything that we have to think about as far as that's concerned?
I would imagine to be a small learning curve. I wouldn't imagine it's substantial enough to, you know, really offset the budget. I think it would be very small details that we would do with this this group in that would be part of their partnership, which should be training. So I think maybe that's how we proceed. We start with an agreement.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
You know, I would be in favor of I guess I would call it more a trial phase as opposed to an acceptance phase. And then see, I don't know if we can, are you able to get data to see the value and the use that people are getting, and then make a further recommendation. But certainly, you know, maybe the issues that we have are maybe perceived by this company, but are a concern for the community. So it's almost like to make sure we have an out so that, you know, there's no hard feelings, or again, it just didn't work out for us. So again, a trial as opposed to an acceptance, and then if it's yearly renewal, then at least it can be decided, you know, at the new council and that time too. And the flip side is, though, can it, you know, I'm not that familiar with the technology. The flip side is, if there's an altercation and there's an issue, can it be acted like surveillance and be reviewed?
Well, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor, I think that's the thing, though. It's not recorded. It's not a recorded image,
So
because that's when you get into legal issues, when you're actually recording and keeping footage.
Okay. So
that is to say, any streaming service that's out there, people can capture footage. That's at that point it becomes beyond your control. So I think that's one thing that was presented to us. It's up to us what kind of streaming platform we'd want to present this onto, like Facebook Live or what have you. So it would be up to us to choose a streaming platform, I believe.
okay, yeah, I'm very indecisive on it from a commitment standpoint, but I'm not on a trial standpoint. That's my input.
Any other comments? I guess for me, it's certainly interesting, and it is an added feature. And for all the reasons that you began your report with, Paul. But I do think that there's a lot of unknowns out there that we still don't have answers on, and privacy is a huge concern. And I guess you just said about we have to decide it on a streaming platform. So for the sake of discussion, we put it on Facebook Live. Well, then as soon as it's done, is it done? What happens to it? Or does it stay on Facebook? Because we know that when we do a Facebook Live video, when Lisa's done Facebook Live videos of events, it stays there. So I personally think that there needs to be more information brought back. Did Scott present directly to PRAC last week? He did. And maybe it's worth bringing him to council, or maybe it's worth at least him sending something so that we know what it looks like and we kind of have more of an understanding of what we are getting into. As I say, I think it sounds great. I think it's an added feature, but there's just, for me, there's too many unknowns to give the green light to go ahead with it at this point. Any other discussion? There is a motion in front of us, but I mean, Paul has indicated that maybe a two-step approach is better. Councillor Hodgins, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. I was having some connection issues. I may have missed something, but I just wanted to, I guess, close out my comments. And it sounds similar to what you were just saying, Madam Mayor. Like I would love to see this go forward. There was a lot of enthusiasm for it at the committee, so I think it's a great idea. But I just think we should be careful and do our due diligence and understand what it is that we're getting. So yeah, I think maybe getting some more information back, understanding it a little bit better, and then moving forward with it. But definitely want to see look for opportunities to move forward with this.
So maybe with that in mind, we can, I don't know whether with the motion would be to defer it or to send it back to Paul, and you can have further discussions with Scott and his company and try to get more information as to the questions that we have, our responsibility, legalities, privacy, and that sort of thing. And then maybe bring back a subsequent report to us. Okay.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. So I would look to my clerks. Ron?
Madam Mayor, if I could make a suggestion, the suggested motion could be that the report be received and that a decision on the report be deferred until yeah, for a month or whatever time frame you wish.
Well, we could just say a decision be deferred until staff comes back with more details or a further report. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much for that, Paul. And I think we all, are excited about this, and we think that it's good, and we'll look forward to more information coming. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, just a quick update for council. Obviously, we're open as of Monday, which is great news. The only real change to us here at the community center is that the stands are now limited to 500 people, because it's 50% or 500, whichever is the smaller number. So the rest of our community center is 50%, but the actual stands themselves, because they're quite large, are down to 500. It's not a huge deal. I think we're going to still manage. And beyond that, the new QR proof of vaccine program is in place. That got implemented, and then almost right away we were closed down. So I think we had one day where we had to implement it. So, we're just getting used to that, getting residents back used to that experience. And I am hoping for, positive months going forward.
Great, thanks for that. And come on, if there's a novice game this weekend, we'll have 500 people out to watch it, right? Everyone will be so excited to go see those little guys play. Any questions for Paul? Okay, economic development, Lisa.
Madam Mayor, I just want to let everyone know, you might have gotten your mailbox already, but we sent out a little booklet updating the community on potential fundraising project for the Lucan Biddulph. Ron's got it up there in his hands. So that's going out to every resident in the community. And it's just a quick little recap of kind of what to look forward to in the next little bit for fundraising for the center. Again, newsletter went out as well yesterday. So updates there.
Okay, thank you for that, Lisa. You are really tunnely, so I don't know whether it's the location of your mic, but as Ron did, he held up the fundraising brochure that's going out, and then there is a newsletter that is gone out. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, councillor comments. Okay, no changes to budget. Any notices of motion? Okay, so then we'll move into our motions. We do have one in front of us with regards to the OGRA conference that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph authorized Jeff Little to attend the 2022 OGRA conference in Toronto from April 10th to April 13th at a cost of $700 plus HST. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. And then we have three bylaws in front of us tonight. Bylaws 06-2022 to authorize the execution of an amending agreement with Aqua, and then bylaw 07-2022 to authorize execution of a site plan amending agreement with Big Al's Storage Incorporated, and bylaw 08-2022 to adopt and confirm all actions and proceedings of the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph at the council meeting held on February 1st. And the motion in front of us that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws 06-2022 through 08-2022 inclusive on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman. All opposed? That's carried. And resolve that the council meeting be adjourned at 12 minutes after 8 p.m. A mover and a seconder. All hands are up. Deputy Mayor or Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much.